The other night I was driving in the center lane of a 3-lane city street. All of a sudden, a car comes into my right blind spot and almost slams into me. I look over and it is swerving in and out of the lane, braking abruptly. I honk and I look over to see if the driver is possibly distracted, and I see that the man driving is drinking something out of a brown bottle. The man then comes up to my side and is screaming at the top of his lungs. Not wanting to get involved, I then make a lane change to the leftmost lane to get away from the man. I can still hear him screaming, so I turn on my rearview camera and I see the man swerve across 2 lanes from rightmost lane to get behind me. He then starts speeding up as if he's trying to ram into me from behind. Once I see him inches from my bumper, I decided to run the red light I'm stopped at and make a right turn in front of the 2 lanes of traffic beside me in the hopes that at this point he would just leave me alone. I look at my rearview camera once again, and I see that this man is following me, trying to hit me from behind yet again. I panic and speed off on a side street, but I look back and he won't let up. He is swerving in the lanes behind me and is trying to keep up. In the distance, I see a freeway on-ramp, so I speed over in hopes of losing him on the freeway. The on-ramp has 2 lanes that merge into one. I pass up a car prior to the merge, thinking that the car will create a buffer between me and the man chasing me. When I look back into the camera, I see that the man is driving in the shoulder, on the brush to the side of the on-ramp in order to pass the other car and catch up to me. At this point, I am driving close to 100 miles per hour, scared for my life, so I slowed down and dialed 911. I explained the situation to the dispatcher, and she recommends that I try to get away to safety. The man then catches up to me and begins coming up to the side of me on the freeway. He repeatedly tries to swerve into me, as if to ram me off or run me off the road. I slow down in hopes that he will pass me up, but he too slows down, and his wife, in the passenger seat, throws a bottle at my car. For a second, I lose visibility as the car is covered in a brown, foamy fluid. I think to myself, surely this is the extent of his road rage, and I look over and it seems as if he is continuing on the freeway. Ready to get away, I then pull off on the next freeway exit, thinking I can just leave the situation. As I do this, the man sees me and makes a 4-lane change onto the exit ramp and tries to ram me once again at the freeway exit. I then am forced to speed through the city streets, and I finally end up at a red light trapped next to the man. I look over at the man and I roll down my window. He's screaming at me. Screaming, why did I honk at him? You trying to make me look like a bad father in front of my kids? You want to go? And just kept honking his horn. His wife is also yelling at me saying, why would you honk at him in front of my kids? I look into the back seat and I see 2 children in car seats. Since I am on speaker with the dispatcher, she hears all of this and tells me to just try and get away. At this point, I am done. I just want to get away from him, so I make a U-turn to head back onto the freeway. He follows me once again and almost hits a plastic construction lane barrier to do so. He then follows me again and is trying to hit me from behind. Once I get onto the overpass to get on the freeway, I glance at him to the side of me, and I see that he's holding something up in my direction. Suddenly, I hear a very loud bang. In that moment, the dispatcher on the phone screams, "Did he shoot you? Are you okay?" Thinking I've been shot, I start screaming, "He's shooting at me! He's shooting at me!" Realizing that running away isn't working, I stop and the man speeds off. Luckily, there is no broken glass and I am not injured in any way. The dispatcher tells me to pull off to a nearby safe location, so I go to the parking lot of a nearby mall. I tell the dispatcher the make, color, and model of car as well as a partial license plate. The whole time I drive there, I am concerned that the man could be following me again. But they send an officer immediately over to file a police report. In waiting for the officer, I realize that my car's cameras are always recording, so I hit the save button. The officer comes over and tells him my story describing everything in detail. I also tell him that I may also have footage of the whole thing. We take a walk around the car, and for the most part there is no damage. The officer then informs me that because I am not injured, and because there is no damage to the car, there really isn't anything that can be done. I ask him if it was an assault. He says because the bottle hit my car and not me, it's not an assault. I ask him if it's reckless driving, and he says that here in California, that is a misdemeanor and that requires the presence of a CHP officer to convict. I then asked him if it could be considered him attempting to end my life because he was trying to ram into me, but he says that this is just plain old road rage and there's not much that can be done. At most, the officer says that once he has a complete license plate, an officer can go out and talk to him. I ask him if the potential footage could be helpful in getting this man reprimanded in some way, and he tells me to only send me the highlights and necessary screenshots, though he doesn't think anything can be done. At the end of all of this, I am extremely shaken up. I eventually go home and review the footage captured by my car. Luckily, I have the entire thing recorded. The moment he almost hits me, his wife throwing the bottle at me, his face as he is yelling at me, his license plate, and even him trying to ram me. It is all recorded. A few days later, the officer calls me and confirms the license plate I have in the video with the recording he has from the freeway on and off ramps. A week and a half passed and there had been no update. While I understand the law is the law, it is unacceptable to me that this man could be so overtly aggressive on the road, threatening my life, the lives of his children, and the lives of everyone else on the road with no sort of punishment. I am genuinely scared for my life, and in the process, both he and I endangered the others on the road. Ultimately, this has left me feeling very disappointed with the system. An act of violence was committed, and due to technicalities, the other driver gets off. I'm trying to keep my retelling as factual as possible, but this is a really terrifying experience. Even in the past few days, I still feel a bit hesitant to be an aggressive driver, overtaking people, even changing lanes, and I'm not comfortable honking. I really wish I could say this didn't get to me, but it has. One odd detail is that the man was taking pictures of my car before the bang happened. What would he possibly want that for? Has anyone else been in a situation like this? Is there truly nothing that can be done? Are there any recommendations for how I can at least have someone check on those kids? So how my friend group works is we have our little circle of people who we hang around with most often. But for big events or bonfires or something similar, we expand and a couple of different friend groups can join. Ben is a part of one of those extended friend groups. He is someone who always posts different and interesting things, who always has something to say. I've gotten along really well with Ben at these events, and we always end up chatting. I've always found him to be a different and unique individual. Ben started going to my local college this year. He shot me a Snapchat basically saying, "Hey, all my friends went away to different schools, and the only person I have to talk to from the area is now my ex-girlfriend. I was wondering if you wanted to get a group together and hang out, because I'd like to have some new friends around." It was actually a really nice message because, with the course I'm in, I don't get to make many friends, and all my close friends are spread out now too, so I said yes. The hangout was initially supposed to be one of my friends, him, and one of his friends. It was a day after class, and I just got home. He told me he was going to take a quick nap before we all head out. When he wakes up, he tells me it's now too late and he has other plans he forgot about. That's totally fine. I wasn't upset about it. I cancel with my friends too, so I can just sit down and do some homework. He texts me a few hours later. I didn't give him my number. He somehow found it, telling me his other plans got canceled and he was now available again and wondering if I still wanted to do something. I said that my friend was now out of the city, and he said he texted his friend but they didn't answer. He decided to pick me up and go for a drive and just chat. Normal enough, I thought. Ben gets to my house at around 10. I go and hop into his car and he speeds off. Oddly enough, he's been talking in an accented voice, kind of like Jamaican or something similar. I thought he was just being goofy, so I played along. Sometimes I would answer back in the account, but then I started to think it was weird that he wasn't talking in his own voice at all. He was driving like a maniac down the street, telling me how he was drinking earlier because he thought he was going to a party. I asked him if he was drinking and driving, and he said no, he only had a few sips. I know I probably should have gotten out of that car then, but at this point we're flying down the highway and I'm scared. He begins to rant about his ex, telling me that there was infidelity and trust issues on his end, and he couldn't tell me what they were because he didn't want me to think badly of him. He told me he was still going to marry this girl and have her children. He ranted about her and got on tangents and started to scream and yell. I started to maybe think that he was on something. We arrive at my college, a half-hour to 40-minute drive away in another city, and he says we should get out of the car. I'm already scared and my phone is dying, so I just listen to what he says. At this point, I'm literally thinking that he might end my life. He took me for a walk through the light woods and then started to make sounds like a creature. He would make like dinosaur sounds or sounds like The Grudge. He would also walk like a creature, morphing his body into weird, creepy movements. I requested for us to go home because I was literally terrified. We get back into the car and start our drive home. He pulls out a pipe and smokes something. I told him that he shouldn't do that, but he doesn't listen, and now he begins to yell. He starts back on his tangents about life. He pulls the car over to get out and do some jumping kicks. What? I'm thinking in my mind. At this point, my phone is dead. He gets back in the car and puts on his favorite song. The song begins slow and then picks up a little later. It's like a 4-minute song. He begins to scream along to the lyrics and smash the windows and dashboard and wheel with his hands, stomping his feet. I've seen someone passionate about a song before, but not like this. Ben swerves all around the road until we get to my house. He then turns to me and says, without an accent, "I know it's late, but did you want to make love?" In the most casual tone in the world. I gave a nervous laugh and said, "Actually, I'm good." He turned to the backseat to get something, but I got out of the car and booked it to my house. I locked the door to my house and the bedroom door in my room, as if he would break in. It might not sound as terrifying as it was for me in the moment, but at the time I was shaking out of pure fear. I don't know if he was just on something crazy or had a split personality or something, but I've never met a person before who I've looked at and thought to myself, "You are going to end someone's life someday." I really hope he doesn't see this because I actually see him at school frequently. So yeah, fun life. I was a new manager of a very old building. I came from social work and was hired to manage a building that was about to celebrate its 100th anniversary. My office was in the basement along with several below-ground apartments. Of these apartments was an elderly fellow that I knew was on palliative care for extreme kidney failure. He would get medication and food delivered every other week, so when it wasn't brought in, I rang him, and when I got no answer, I asked the police for a welfare check. This was a very warm June, and the way the building was constructed, you couldn't smell something wafting out of an apartment unless the door was open and allowed the smell out. Once the police opened the door, everyone knew that he had been dead for a while. The smell permeated everything. The smell of rotten human got into the air ducts, and it's not something you forget. Fast forward about 1 month to July. Now mind you, there are about 105 tenants in this 4-story building, and I get a call from one tenant niece that she hasn't heard from her uncle in a while and could we please check on him. Of course I knew this guy. I'll just pop up and make sure he's okay. We'll have a laugh. No answer. I call the police for a welfare check. It's been a regular 85 degrees outside for a few weeks, and yes, he's passed away. The smell of a dead human is so much different than the smell of dead other things. It's a sticky, sweet smell combined with an acrid taste and a heavy, I don't know how to describe it, dead meat mushroom sort of smell. It doesn't smell like other rotten meat. The me made a joke about me staging this just to see him again. The smell was so bad in the hallway just from opening the door for the few minutes to take the body out that I had entire families running from the building in tears. I knew I had to mitigate this. I knew he passed on a small carpet in the middle of the room, so I put some menthol under my nostrils, double-gloved, wrapped my pant legs, and pulled up the carpet that was pretty thick with adipose tissue. I had told the coroner what I was going to do before I did it. I slipped in his goo. I double-bagged his carpet and opened the windows. It's still rough to think about. It involved large fans and my staying up all night. Cut to 1 month later. I'm putting notices on doors for an upcoming bedbug inspection. I smell that smell on the 4th floor. That acrid, dead smell. Someone was dead. There's no mistaking it. I start knocking on doors and only 1 out of 25 answer because it was the middle of the day. I can't just go into the apartments. I call the police, they come out, and they confirm it's definitely somebody had passed, but they can't figure out where it's coming from. I literally stood there trying to figure out if a body constituted an emergency so I could circumvent the 48-hour rule of entering an apartment. The police told me that without something else they couldn't just start running into apartments. We walked up and down the halls and couldn't figure out where the smell of the body was coming from. I went to my office to print up 48-hour notices of intent to enter. I laid in bed that night and started thinking about it. The smell of the dead body only entered the hallway when the door was opened. Someone had the smell of body and opened a door. Someone opened a door. Day of, I go apartment to apartment. 10 apartments in, and white-haired, middle-aged dude answers the door. Huge wafts of bleach belch out of his apartment. Instead of hanging out like most people would do when someone is inspecting your apartment, he takes off. The floor has been bleached. The kitchen had been bleached. Everything is spotless. Neighbors later said that he told people that chicken went bad. Chicken does not smell like human. I contacted the non-emergency line that day, and without anything else to go on, there wasn't a lot they could do. So, middle-aged, nondescript white dude on the 4th floor. What are you hiding? This all happened in the last 3 weeks, and the final part hopefully just took place this morning. To set the stage, I'm a single dad with a daughter who is about to turn 3. I don't really have time to go out and meet people, but I decided I needed to put myself out there, so I made a Tinder profile. I had a few decent dates, but nothing too special. Then about 3 weeks ago, I matched with a new person. She lived about 30 minutes from me and looked cute, so I messaged her. We started talking, and she gave me her number. We texted for a week or so, and things seemed great. We both seemed to be on the same page about things, in that neither of us wanted to rush into anything serious, but having a friends with benefits would be nice. So we decided to spend an evening together. The first evening went well, and we got along great. We did the same thing a few days later, and again, everything went fine. But after about 2 weeks, it became clear that she wanted to start an actual relationship, and I wasn't ready to commit to that. I made that clear, and she seemed to understand and accept it. After some of the things she said, though, I was starting to see some little red flags, and I wasn't sure if she was going to actually respect my wishes and not try to move things forward into a serious relationship. And there were a number of things she said that made me think she was a bit emotionally unstable. So I decided to take a few days to think about things and decide what I wanted to do. We had been texting at least a little bit every day, and I felt like the daily contact was not helping to convince her that I was serious when I said that I wanted to take things slow and not jump into a relationship. So on a Friday morning, I was texting her and then just kind of stopped replying. I didn't think much about it since I was really busy anyways. She came to my house that night. Just showed up unannounced. I was polite and made up an excuse about my phone being broken. She claimed that she had showed up because she was worried something had happened to me since I had always replied right away before. But her showing up at my house was another huge red flag. I figured the broken phone excuse would benefit me, giving me the time to evaluate this new warning sign and decide what to do. I told her I was fine, but that I'd be MIA for a little bit until I got a new phone. I don't have a home internet connection either, so basically all contact with me would cease until I reinitiated. She seemed to be fine, apologized for intruding on my evening, and left right away, so I didn't give much thought, other than it reaffirming my concern that she was becoming obsessed. In the next few days, she sent a few messages basically just checking to see if I got a new phone. There was nothing too crazy, but it was still very worrying, and with everything else, it told me that I needed to cut things off completely. That leads me to last night. It was 6 days since she had showed up at my house, and I hadn't contacted her so far. I was hoping that my silence would send a message or that maybe she'd forget about me and move on to someone else, but 'twas not to be. I went to sleep at around 12 a.m. and woke up at 6. Upon looking at my phone, I saw literally 15 message notifications, 6 missed calls, and a voicemail. The text started off saying, "I know you're probably asleep, but I saw you accepted a friend on Facebook 2 days ago, so I just wanted to know why you've been ignoring me," and then went to pleading me to answer the phone, and finished with, "If you won't talk to me, I'm going to come to your house." This whole thing took place between 1 and 2 a.m. The voicemail was just her, sobbing into the phone and screaming, "Why are you doing this to me?" Keep in mind, I've known this girl for less than a month, and we've only been on 2 dates in that time. At this point, I was pretty freaked out, so I called a friend of mine asking for advice. My friend told me to just be blunt and tell her that threatening to come to my house in the middle of the night was completely inappropriate and that she's acting crazy and to not contact you again. So, here I am this morning, after sending her a long text kindly but firmly telling her that her behavior was not acceptable and that she was to not contact me again. We'll see how it goes. Update. For everyone who is worried about my safety and everyone who sees where I'm coming from, thank you, and I'm fine. From everyone who's saying I'm a jerk, I give you that. I should have been honest when she came to my house instead of making an excuse. I fully admit that. I'm not saying I handled things correctly, but honestly, I would have never written about this in the first place if she had just calmly asked to talk about things. This whole thing happened in the middle of the night, so I never even knew she was upset until it was all over. But if you think her reaction was normal, I'll tell you what she said about her own actions. She did reply, apologizing for her actions, saying that she understood why I would not be comfortable continuing things with her after waking up to that, and telling me that she appreciated my honesty and that she knows that she needs help and is actively seeking therapy to deal with her issues. So this story is a bit of a long story from several years ago when I worked in a fast food chain that served barbecue. But I clearly remembered this because it's just so weird. My parents owned the business, so they allowed me to work there whenever I wanted. At this time, I'm 14 years old, but I had purple hair because I had identity issues, I guess. So I looked a lot older than I actually was, but I was still only about 5'4". One day I'm working on a Sunday night with only one other girl a little older than me trying to get started closing since we close in about an hour. It's 8 p.m. and fully dark outside. It's completely silent. Usually you can hear cars pull up and you can definitely see them as the walls were covered in windows. I'm just sweeping up when I see something move out in the dark. I look up, and in the back of our parking lot is a man in all dark clothes just looking inside. No car in sight. I think it's weird, but people are like that sometimes. About 10 minutes later, the door squeaks open really quickly, and it made me jump because it was so loud. It was a very large and tall man wearing black scrubs and a scraggly beard. At this point, I'm annoyed because it's like 40 minutes before we close, and it's super hard to close this restaurant. But I put my biggest smile on and say like usual, "Hi, welcome." Nothing. No words for what felt like 5 minutes. And then a woman wearing the same clothes comes in, and this lady looks like the guy's twin. So they come up to the front counter to order, and I say, "What can I get for you today? Do y'all have fortune cookies?" No sir, we only sell barbecue and sides." "That's too bad. We brought our own anyway. I want a large sweet tea." And then the creepy lady chimes in. "So no fortune cookies here?" "No, ma'am." At this point, she actually seemed really mad that we don't have fortune cookies. "Then no food for me." That was their whole order, was just a large drink. They paid and sat down at one of the empty tables. This man had been carrying a computer bag with him inside, so I thought he had some work to do real quick. But no, he opens his bag and pulls out a whopping handful of fortune cookies, like at least 30. They're both very silent, and it's already creeping me out. As I'm sweeping under the table next to them, the guy says, without ever looking my direction, "We use these numbers from these cookies to play in the lottery every day." "That's really cool." "No, it's not. It's serious. We didn't do it one night, and it was the winning numbers. We could have won $2,000. We cried for months." "Oh." Little 14-year-old me didn't know what to say, so I just kept sweeping. "Now we run an acupuncture shop in the next town over. We can cure everything." Awesome." At this point, I'm sweeping towards the back of the store. I'm facing away from them because they were already creeping me out, and I was hoping they'd just stop talking. "I don't think you think I'm serious." His voice got really loud all of a sudden, like he was yelling at me, and now he was looking at me. They both looked really angry at me for some reason, but I didn't want to say any more, so I kept quiet. Still, the creepy man then says, "We cure everything. Smoking habits, cured. Back pain, cured. Chronic headaches, cured." He's actually screaming at me now, and my coworker has been in the walk-in cooler, so she heard nothing. I'm starting to walk into the kitchen, but I had to pass him to get there, into a phone. As I'm speed walking past, he stares me down. At this point, I'm absolutely terrified, and I don't know what to do, so I start to call my parents. Before I can even grab this phone, this man is suddenly right behind me. "We even help ladies get pregnant," he said in a little louder than a whisper, and this sent shivers all the way down my spine that I froze. The man walks back towards the table, and I take off downstairs to my coworker. I decided the best option was to lock ourselves in the office for a while till they left. Eventually we came out, and they were gone. There isn't really a good ending to this, because that's all there was. I told my parents, and they came and got me. We tried looking up acupuncture places in town, he said, but there weren't any for another 60 miles away. Now, a year later, I'm at a gas station down the street from the restaurant, and I'm filling up when a man came back to his car, which was beside me. I didn't pay any attention until he said, "What a nice day outside. A good day for some acupuncture." I look up, and I kid you not, it's the same creepy dude from that night. I said, "Yep," and promptly stopped filling up my car and drove away. I don't know if the guy recognized me or what, but I hope to God I never see that guy that wanted to help me get pregnant at 14 again. Nearly 2 weeks ago, me and some friends attended a cosplay event and went as characters from Full Metal Alchemist and Fire Emblem. I was Edward Elric, and one of my friends was Winry. My ex-spouse was Colonel Mustang, and so forth. There was 6 of us, and we arrived the earliest because we were excited to meet other cosplayers. We ran into a woman who wasn't a cosplayer, but a weeaboo and your stereotypical fujoshi. We discovered this upon meeting when she squealed, ran up to me and my ex-spouse, then asked for Mustang on Edward action. I don't need to explain why that's disgusting. That was the first red flag. My fraternal twin who cosplayed Kimberly shot me a glare that said, "We need to go," and everyone silently agreed. Me, sympathizing with her, decided against it. So in Japanese, a mutual language me and my friends speak alongside Dutch and Gaelic, begged to stick it out. A bad idea in hindsight. She screamed and brought unwanted attention. This was the last straw for them. Immediately, my brother, ex-spouse, and other 2 friends disguised their urgent want for disassociation as wanting to walk around, leaving me and Winry as her company. Minor time skip, the 3 of us are wandering. Despite being an introvert, I try to be as interactive and inclusive to our company as possible because nobody likes to feel like the third wheel. As me and my friend converse with her, we quickly learned of her unappealing aspects. She ships indirect familial relationships, if you get my drift. Apparently has nosebleeds for Seal and Sebastian fanfiction, and believes relationships with animals isn't all that bad. Another red flag I shamefully attempted ignoring under the impression she was young, of 17 and 19. But no, it turns out she's 21. Major time skip. It's been over 4 hours and she tailgated me and Winry the entire event. In an attempt to relax myself, I ask if they're down for drinks. We grab a couple and then Winry sets off to find my brother and our other friends so we can go, leaving me with this weird feeling in my stomach. As a Scotsman and avid drinker, I definitely had more than a few drinks, so I was kind of tipsy. I got a call from my brother saying for everyone to meet in the parking lot, so I bid her goodbye and left, unbeknownst to her following me. I was the first to reach the car. The doors were unlocked, thankfully, because it was cold. I hop in the back and take off my coat. The liquor starts hitting differently, so I became too disoriented to notice the silhouette behind the tinted glass, peering over me as I tried to collect myself. I was hearing the door open that triggered my anxiety, but assuming it was my brother or friend, I didn't bother. It was cold outside, but I was hot and exhausted from walking around in cosplay all day, so I closed my eyes and took some deep breaths. I was feeling someone crawl into my lap and straddle me that provoked an alarm response, and much to my dismay, it was the woman from the event. Buzzed and discombobulated, I struggled to comprehend what was unfolding. For the life of me, I couldn't fathom the reason behind her actions. I should probably include a trigger warning for assault here. She starts touching me, hands under my shirt, hands on my inner thighs, etc. At this point, I'm stiff as a board because I have flashbacks from prior assault. My heart is racing, my eyes are wide, and my mouth's agape. I'm trying to scream and say stop, but the words wouldn't come out. It was the sound of my friend's laughter echoing through the lot that got her attention, where she immediately hopped off and scooted to the right seat. My wig disheveled and cosplay untidy, my brother glared at me and asked what she was doing in our car. When I could finally speak, I lied and told him she was just waiting for her ride. After she left, I know my ex-spouse could tell I was off, but kept hushed. Because of this, I've not interacted with anyone. I'm scared to tell my girlfriend. I'm scared to tell anyone. This has been wrecking me mentally and emotionally the last 2 weeks. It's taking everything in me not to cry right now, but to the weeaboo fujoshi we met at the event, please, control yourself. This was about 11 years ago when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and I was at my papa's house for a family reunion. This side of the family was spread all over the state, so it was pretty rare that we all saw each other. One of my family members that lived away was my second cousin, Steve. Steve was in his 40s at the time, and always wore Oshkosh overalls, old house shoes that he wore everywhere, and had white, stringy hair that was pulled back in a ponytail with a rubber band. At least 250 pounds and over 6 feet tall. Very large. Unfortunately, Steve was in an accident 20 years ago and never got off the painkillers resulting from it. We're talking grams of Percocet a day, so he is constantly high. He's either wide-eyed and staring into people's souls or passed out. No in-between. He was the type of guy to interrupt a conversation just to ask the whole room what their worst dream ever was. Really bizarre. My dad always told me to stay away from Steve. He didn't trust him and always told me to not be alone with him. I didn't question it because why would I? Dad tells me someone is creepy, I believe him. The only reason he let me stay at Papa's is because there was a lot of other people staying there the night too. One of my other cousins, A, was also in town, and we wanted to spend as much time possible together. Being the two youngest people there, we were given the living room floor to sleep on. The living room was connected to the kitchen to the north, a bedroom to the west, and the entrance to the south. Above the west bedroom was the staircase to the upstairs bedrooms. This was a very low and narrow staircase, and anyone above 5 foot tall had to duck while climbing up it. As you can imagine, a giant like Steve did not go gracefully up or down. The morning of the reunion, A and I were supposed to help our papa make chicken and dumplings. I was really looking forward to this, so I had barely gotten any sleep over the night. So I'm drifting in and out of consciousness, and at around 5:30 or 6 in the morning, I hear Steve start to come down the stairs. I didn't want to be the only two up together, so I acted like I was still asleep in hopes he'd make coffee or go outside. He stops halfway down, and it sounded like he sat down. As I'm laying there, I hear the sound a camcorder makes when he starts recording. Not knowing what's going on, I stay there, frozen, because all I know is Steve is somewhere behind me, recording. After what seemed like an eternity, but in all reality probably 15 minutes, I hear him walk down the rest of the stairs. Still recording because I hear the zoom sound. I have no idea what to do but lay there and hope he is recording something else other than A and I. He finally walks around to the front of us and stays there, recorder in hand about 2 inches from our feet. By this time I'm shaking, I'm so scared, and I start to silently cry. He must have seen the tears running down my face because he immediately pressed the button and stopped recording. He sped over to the fireplace, moved some things around, and what do I hear? The same sound I just heard from the recorder in his hand. He had been recording us all night long. He went back up the stairs so loudly and quickly that A woke up. She turned around to me and asked why I was crying. I told her, and she runs to go get Papa. Of course, Papa doesn't believe us and just thought I was dreaming it since I didn't know Steve very well. However, I tell my dad what happened at the family reunion, and my dad immediately goes to Steve and takes him outside. I don't know what happened in that time. I do know Dad came back, and Steve's car was definitely gone shortly after. I've only seen Steve once since then, and it was at a funeral where we kept our distance. I was older and more aware of how to avoid creeps. Plus, he was passed out on one of the couches in the back of the funeral home for most of the time. I know this isn't creepy to some people because he didn't touch or physically harm us, but it was traumatic enough for me to still have a sticker on the front-facing camera of my phone and laptop. After all, you never know who might be recording. Hey friends, thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. If you got a story, be sure to submit them to my subreddit, r/LetsReadOfficial, and give and receive feedback from the community, and maybe even hear your story featured on the next video. And join my Discord to interact with me and other listeners directly. And if you want to support me even more, grab early access to all future narrations for just $1 a month on Patreon, and maybe even pick up some Let's Read merch on Spreadshirt. And check out the Let's Read podcast, where you can hear all these stories in long compilation form and save huge on data, located anywhere you listen to podcasts. Links in the bio. Thanks so much, friends, and I'll see you again soon.